Hi there, it's Nicole for the Create a Smile video blog hop, and today I'm using the stamps from the Sending Sunshine kit. This is an exclusive kit, and I created Copic colored cards and backgrounds. To start, I die cut a couple of squares using some Simon Says Stamp stitched square dies, two different sizes, the two largest sizes. I'm going to start with the largest one and create my jellyfish card. To do this, I am going to take the jellyfish stamp and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that a couple times, and they're going to overlap. And to do this so that I don't have that line, I am going to mask the first stamped image. So I'm going to stamp that first one kind of up at the top, slightly off the edge of the card. And then I am going to take some masking paper and stamp the image again, and I laid it over the first image and then stamped that right next to it. Now you can see that the first jellyfish didn't stamp that great there on the tentacles. That's okay, I can go over that later, or really where this is going to have so much going on, you probably aren't going to even be able to tell once I get it all colored in. I started with my dark B69 at the bottom and feathered that in, and then went in with B66. The colors are all going to be listed up there in the upper left corner of the screen. B34, pardon me, is up at the top. I am doing really kind of messy feathering. I'm going in now with a little B63 and then B66 again. Right now it looks really messy and not all that great. The more you saturate the paper when you're doing, especially when you're doing a background like this, the better it's going to look. So I am filling it all in really well, going over again there with the B34 at the top. And then some B66 there. I did go back up at the top and add a little B66 here and there for a little variation in color. I went back with the B69 here along the bottom and then smoothed it out with B66. And then I'm going to go back with B34 and blend, blend, blend to get rid of any of those harsh lines. Going in with the B34 again, blend all of that out. I'm using all the same colors. I may not have listed each one every time I switch a color, but you're going to get the idea there. Now that I have the background mostly colored in, I'm going to take the colorless blender and I am drawing in some seaweed there at the bottom of the square. And you can see wherever I lay down the colorless blender, the Copic markers or colors that I've already laid down move away from that. So it's not going to completely disappear, but for my purposes here where I want it to look like an underwater scene, it's definitely going to move that color away enough so that I can go in with YG17 and G09 and color in some seaweed. And it gives it enough of a look that it adds not only texture, but it gives it the appearance of being underwater. That G09 is just going to add a little variation in color to the YG17. Next, I am going to take my colorless blender and I just started to add some little water dots and things, and decided before I go any further with that I probably should go ahead and add in some color dots. So I'm using B23 up here at the top and adding little dots to give even more the appearance of water, kind of adding those randomly here and there. And eventually I'm going to fill in the entire thing with these little dots, or not the entire thing, but a good portion of it to really give it a nice appearance. Go ahead and add some down here at the bottom. The more layers of ink added here, I think the more it starts looking like an underwater scene. I purposely left the jellyfish to color last so that I could build the scene first and then fill those in. I added some darker dots with B69 near the bottom. Those are pretty harsh. If they're a little too harsh, you can always go back with a lighter color. Up at the top, I felt like there was a little bit, you could see too many lines or something, so I did blend it out a little bit more and then went and added some more dots. But where those dark dots are at the bottom, you can always go back over them with a lighter marker. Before I got too excited about adding all those dots at the bottom, I decided I wanted a few rocks at the bottom of my little scene here as well next to the seaweed. So I'm going in with my colorless blender again and just creating some rock shapes. Again, it's not going to completely erase the color that I've already laid down, but it will move enough of it away that you can fill in. And I'm using E49 and E57 here to color in these rocks. Once I have those rocks laid down, I can really go to town finishing the rest of the background with these little dots and things. So here I'm going to do B66 and really fill in that darker area of the underwater scene with some of these darker dots. And then I'm ready to start coloring in my jellyfish. I'm going to start with Y08 just along the bottom edge of the head of the jellyfish. Most of that is going to get colored in. I'm using R22 now for the top portion of the jellyfish, and I'm going to use some R24, R46, and R39. I decided I was going to add a little bit darker yellow to that, but instead I went over the yellow with the R22, and it kind of gives that nice variation to a red to orange look. Go ahead and color in the tentacles, doing a little R46, Y08, which this doesn't look very great until I go back and blend that a little bit more. R24 now, and I'll finish with R22. Color over anything and blend out anything that I need to give that a more seamless look. And then again, I'm going to go in with some dots, starting with R39 at the darkest part, and then R46. Give them some nice texture, and then R24. Anywhere I need to fill in the underwater scene now, there are a couple little areas I went and did that. I'm taking B23 and kind of coloring over all of this, even over the jellyfish a little bit to add a little bit more water. If I got any areas a little too dark, I just went over it with R22. I could color over this as many times as I need to get the look that I needed to. Kind of had to go back and add my dots then to this one jellyfish. No big deal, that was pretty quick and easy. I went over the entire jellyfish then with the Wink of Stella clear glitter pen, and then really added detail to the eyes with a black gel marker. Finally, I'm going in with my colorless blender and really adding a bunch of dots where it's going to move that ink away from those areas and lighten it up quite a bit. And that is the background for my card. I did go in and add some little dots with the little, or not dots, bubbles with the bubbles stamp from the stamp set in the kit. And then I'm going to use my colorless blender to remove the ink as best I can from those bubbles. Keep going over that. I am using a scrap piece of paper to wipe my colorless blender off on. It's picking up quite a bit of that purple or blue, dark blue ink. So I want to clean the tip pretty often, and I just brush it off on a scrap piece of paper. Once I have the ink removed, I am going to take some glossy accents and fill in all of those bubbles with the glossy accents. This will give a nice little raised dimensional look to those bubbles, which is kind of fun. I also stamped the greeting with Versamark ink right there to the right of the jellyfish and heat embossed it with some white embossing powder so it really pops. Now for my second card, I'm going to build up my scene starting with the cute little crab there, stamp him along the bottom edge. I did go ahead and color him a little bit in first. I'm using R00 and R22. I'm not going to get too crazy about coloring him all the way in until I have built the rest of the scene, but I did lay down my base colors here. I wanted to keep the stomach portion pretty light, so that's the R00. I'm going to go ahead and blend that into the R22 a little bit. And again, very similar to the other one, except this one I am going to start with a little sand along the bottom with E55 and E57, and then I can go over that after I've done it. I could have used the colorless blender, but where this was such a huge area, I really felt like I should color this in first. So go over that whole thing and blend it out. I'm going to start with my B66 this time, and I'm going to feather in. You can see now that you can see that sand from or underneath the B66. Go ahead and feather that in. You can see some of the B66 gets on the crab, which isn't a big deal because I really am going to darken up some of those areas with R39, so it's not going to be a big deal. I'm using a little B63 now, and I'm going to come in from the top with my B34. And using B34 and B63 to really blend out my water ocean look. Again, the more I saturate the paper, the better that's going to blend. So I'm really going over it and over it to get that blended out really nicely. That looks really good. I'm going to add a little bit darker here near the bottom where I wanted to darken that up. I'll darken it up even more with a little B69. And then go ahead and blend that out. And you can see since the paper is really saturated, it's blending a lot easier than it was when I first laid down those initial colors. Blend that all out again. And I'm going and darkening it up even more. Really saturating that paper. I'm going to darken this little area here where the browns are and add a shadow for that crab to be sitting on. And then just like my other one, I'm going to use the colorless blender to draw in some seaweed to build up that scene and definitely make it a little bit more interesting and fun. So there I love watching the colorless blender remove or push that ink away from where you lay that down. I'm using YG17 and G09 again to color those in. Add some nice color there. Blend out some of that G09 that maybe got a little harsh. I'm going to start adding some little dots with the B69 as well as B66. Anywhere that I maybe got those B69 dots a little dark, I can go over them with B66 to blend them out. For the crab, I'm going to be using R22, R24, R46, and R39. I'm laying down some of those darker colors and blending them out now. There's that B39. Really darken that outside edge up. And that's going to really help disguise any of those areas where maybe I got a little aggressive with my purples and blues. You can see the crab really coming to life the more color that I lay down and blend in here. I'm really going over the crab to get him colored in just the way I wanted. I kept laying down in color and laying down color. One of the great things about Copic markers is you can go over them as many times as you need to get the effect that you want without tearing a hole in the paper, which is one of the things I love the most. So you can really work on blending and shadows and anything else that you want to achieve. I use the black gel pen for the eyes again on the crab, and then I'm going in with R39 and R46 and adding some dots to my crab. Adding some more dots with B23 and B63 along the top of my square. This is where I'm starting to build that more ocean looking scene. If you get the dots too dark, you can always go back over them to mute them a little bit. You'll see that here in just a little bit, where I felt like maybe I got a little too aggressive with my little ocean water bubbles. Going in with the colorless blender and adding some lighter areas. The more you want to darken any of those areas, just hold the marker there more or go over it a couple more times. I'm using the colorless blender along the sandy bottom of the sea here to give it a little bit more of those grains of sand type of look. Again, I'm going over some of them more than once to darken them up even more. And there I felt like some of the dots were a little bit too harsh, so I'm going over with B23 and blending some of those back out, and then I can go back over them again if I need to add a few more. I'm going to stamp those bubbles from the Sending Sunshine stamp set, and again take the colorless blender and remove the ink from the bubbles. The more times you go over it, the more ink that will be removed. I'm going to go ahead and go in with the colorless blender, adding a few more dots. I felt like I needed another item there along the bottom, so I'm using the colorless blender to remove some ink and create another little rock. I'm going to color that in with E57 and E49. And that really kind of rounds out and completes the scene. I'm stamping the greeting from the stamp set, the Pinch Me greeting with Versamark ink, and sprinkling on some white embossing powder and heat setting that, so it's really nice and bright and bold, just like the other card. I'm going to finish with some more white dots created with the colorless blender, and I'm really going to work now to get those white, so I'm kind of pressing my marker a little bit more, dotting it a few more times so it really helps remove that ink. Adding those all around the card. As the ink dries, you might need to go over them again, so I'm going over a few of them more than once. Take the glossy accents and apply that to the thought bubbles. I'm darkening up the areas around the crab to really make that pop. And then this card is all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this video showcasing the Create a Smile Sending Sunshine Kit. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Please click anywhere on this screen to be hopped along to the next video on the Video Blog Hop. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.